The Audrain Museum network is growing like crazy. If you're not a subscriber yet, we want to know why. Subscribe right now. People keep saying, why doesn't this channel have 100,000 subscribers? Well, it's because you're not one yet. Do it right now, and you'll be amazed with what you see on this channel. We can't wait to bring you more great stuff. Hello, and welcome to this exhibition highlights video of our current show, Technological Marvels, A Story of Evolution. Here in the gallery, we're featuring the sequel to our show, Early Landmarks in Automotive Engineering, which told us the automotive story from 1886 through to the dawn of World War II in 1939. Now we pick the story up again. It's after the war. People are incredibly excited about automobiles. They've been deprived, they've been starved, and the automobile designers have been hard at work at all of that work they couldn't do while they were working on war projects, and now they're going to deliver their magic to the public for the first time in almost a decade. It's an exciting trip, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this. Our first video covers a really interesting take on performance and advanced engineering from the UK, the US, and Spain. Let's take a look. In an automotive scene that was dominated by the big three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, it's sort of surprising to realize that the company that caught all of them napping in 1948 was Hudson, one of the scrappy but persistent independents in Detroit, and they were the first to come up with an all-new body in 1948. Now, the automotive scene after the end of World War II was such that there was so much pent-up demand that it was very easy for any of the manufacturers to sell their warmed up and warmed over 1942 models as 1945, 46, 47s. But by 1948, they came out with new designs, but Hudson took a real step forward with a step down. This Hudson Commodore was so incredibly advanced in so many ways, it pioneered what they called step-down chassis. And this is a result of their monoblock construction, not quite a unibody, but a construction with a frame and a cowl and a roof so well integrated that it not only provided for a much stronger and stiffer structure, but also allowed the passenger compartment to be inside the frame rails. So rather than climbing up into a Hudson sedan like you did in a Buick or a Chrysler, you open the door and climb down. The result was a much wider interior. Now, the trunk sort of suffered a bit with this, but that's another story. A much wider interior, and most important, a lower center of gravity. It allowed the Hudson designers and engineers to lower the car so that it looked dramatically lower than anything else on the road at the time, which resulted in enhanced aerodynamics, especially with this great streamlined look, and it also helped road holding. Now, the advantages of the road holding and the lower center of gravity were what made this car an absolute champion on the NASCAR tracks, because the NASCAR racers quickly discovered that these attributes were things that really paid off on the racetrack. Now, one of the other things that this car boasted was the fact that Hudson didn't have the same kind of development money as some of the others in Detroit, the bigger manufacturers. So this car has got a straight 8 L-head engine, while General Motors, of course, had introduced their overhead valve engines. And typically, for instance, in the Buick Roadmaster, which was a competitor for the Hudson Commodore, it's interesting to compare. The Buick Roadmaster, 48 Buick Roadmaster, is a terrific car. However, with 15 more horsepower, this Hudson went faster. It handled better, and it also weighed almost 400 pounds less than the Buick, because they were able to use the engineering of this car in a way that was much more efficient than you found in the Buick. These were absolutely brilliant cars and an excellent expression of post-war optimism and engineering know-how. This is a car also that was capable of almost 100 miles per hour. For a family car in 1948, that was absolutely incredible. The Buick Roadmaster, with a much bigger, more powerful engine, can only manage about 80 or 85 miles per hour. So this is really interesting to see what the Hudson engineers accomplished in this great car. Now, Just across the pond, a year later in 1949, something truly remarkable was going on in the UK. Let's take a look at the Jaguar XK120. In the UK, although they had been one of the victorious Allied powers, things were not really terrific after World War II. The economy was still being run on a very economic basis. Rationing was in place. There was really a great need to export or die, to get hard currency, preferably US dollars, into the economy of the UK. And one of the ways that was done most effectively was through automobile export. And William Lyons had founded the Swallow Sidecar Company back in the 1920s, as the name implies, building sidecars for motorcycles, and then branched out into automobile construction, and by the beginning of World War II, had developed a line of very fast, sophisticated road cars called the SS, for Swallow Sidecar. They were sports cars like the SS100, but also wonderful sedans that were very much sort of budget Bentleys, as it were. After the war, obviously they changed the name to Jaguar because, as they stated in one of their advertisements, our former name had acquired unfortunate connotations in the past few years, to say it least, to put it mildly. But what they did was they developed this brilliant engine, a twin overhead cam straight six, that unusually for the time developed peak horsepower at a really high 5,000 RPM. This was an engine designed for their first post-war sedan, which would become the Mark VII. However, the sedan was not quite ready, so in order to showcase the engine, William Lyons said, let's build a limited number of sports cars, and we'll put them out in the market, showcase the engine, and then we'll bring in our sedans that actually make us the money. The XK120 Roadster was introduced in 1948 and followed very quickly by the XK120 fixed head coupe. And anyone who watches this network and has watched this video of me driving this car knows how much I love this car, and specifically the shape of the car. It's absolutely brilliant. William Lyons basically was responsible for the design of all the cars at Jaguar, and he was a big admirer of the pre-war French aerodynamic school of design. And this car is just that. It looks like it's moving at 60 miles per hour when parked. Absolutely brilliant. But the heart of this, and the reason why it's in this show, is about that engine. That engine is a brilliant engine which did something, again, that Jaguar was famous for, punching above its weight. Quite famously, in 1948, Jaguar set a production speed record of 132 miles per hour on the Jabuki Highway in Belgium. That was an amazing feat for a production car, not a race car, well, it had been specially tuned, but it was basically a car that you could get in the showroom. And cars like this were one of the reasons why Jaguar was able to establish itself in the US market so brilliantly, because it offered a level of performance that was unimaginable in anything outside of a race car. Now, it's also interesting to note that the third car we're going to cover in this video has a relation to this Jaguar and speed records. Of course, then as now, performance sells cars. And being able to boast that you have the fastest production car on the planet is a very good marketing tool. And of course, Jaguar did not hesitate to maximize that. One of the other things about this car, which is so incredibly advanced, is for a car of the late 1940s, it left the 1930s behind. The handling was also on another league. And this basic chassis would go on to become the Jaguar C-Type and then the D-Type, which became all-conquering at the Le Mans 24 Hours and a number of other long-distance competition races, and also, of course, in circuit races here in the US as well. This is a car, when you drive it, if you did not know that it was a car from the late 40s or early 50s, you would think that it's a car from 1960. The dynamic capabilities are such that it was clear that a great leap was taken from the late 30s to this time. As I mentioned before, the engineers and designers, while they couldn't work on automotive projects during the war, they kept their minds turning, and they were always looking forward to what they could deliver once the war was ended. And this Jaguar is a great example of that. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about this Jaguar when we look at the third car in this group. I mentioned performance and advancement in engineering from the US, the UK, and now a very unexpected quarter, Spain. Spain is an unlikely source for a supercar, and yet from Spain came the car behind me, the Pegaso Z102. As you've also seen on this network before, this is a car that I am absolutely crazy about, and a car which a lot of people, most people, have never seen before in their lives. Pegaso, of course, sprang from the mind of Wilfredo Ricart, a brilliant Spanish engineer who was the head of advanced projects and racing engineering at Alfa Romeo before World War II. After the war, he went back to his native Spain and he was charged with developing the Inasa truck company. And he thought the best way to do that is to train engineers by building a super advanced sports GT car so that they could learn how to make things as complicated as humanly possible. And he succeeded. Thinking about the fact that the Hudson ran a very powerful and capable L-head inline 8, the Jaguar is a very modern dual overhead cam inline 6. The Pegaso in 1951 was powered by a 4-cam V8 with 4 carburetors, a non-synchro 5-speed transaxle gearbox, inboard brakes. I mean, anything that could be done simply, Wilfredo said, let's do it the other way. The result was a car that was absolutely amazing, but also incredibly complex. But he delivered performance. For approximately the same horsepower as the Jaguar, which could do 120 miles per hour, the Pegaso could do 140. And in fact, it was quite a great feat when on that same Jabuki highway in Belgium, a Pegaso Roadster set a new world speed record for a production car at 155 miles per hour. This is absolutely amazing. The company was over the moon, and they couldn't wait to boast about it at the next London Motor Show. Well, of course, Jaguar was not going to take this laying down, and they quickly rushed to Jabuki with a highly modified XK120 Roadster with an aerodynamic bubble top and lots of trick bodywork and very, very high state of tune, and did 177 miles per hour on the Jabuki highway, thereby snatching the record from Pegaso. But that could hardly be called a production car. It wouldn't be the first or last time that a manufacturer did that, of course, but nonetheless, here in 2024, we have to feel a little bad for Pegaso about what they could have done, what they could have accomplished. Now, just as the Hudson was a great example of really advanced engineering serving a very specific purpose to add to passenger comfort, road holding, and durability. And the Jaguar, a great example of taking advanced engineering and putting it in a package that could really punch above its weight. The Pegaso was really very much an example of complexity, weight, and cost. Pegasos were never very successful in competition, which is what they were also meant to do, because they were too complex, too heavy, and not really developed enough. In the entire run of the company, from 1951 through 1957, they built approximately 76 of these cars. And they were a great story of what might have been. But nevertheless, the idea that they put all of these things together in the early 1950s from a company that had never manufactured a car before was a great example of a true technological marvel. One other thing about that Jabuki record attempt, Pegaso, of course, thought, well, we're going to do what everybody else does in this circumstance, and we're going to build a special record car. They built something called the Bisiluro, a twin-bodied, basically dual pencils for the road with the Pegaso V8 engine in it. The car, of course, in typical Pegaso fashion, failed before its first attempt, and they had a standard Roadster there, and that they did the attempt with and actually got their record. But this is a great example of what we're highlighting in this show. Examples of interesting solutions to technological challenges and also technological advances that were very surprising for the time and that today we take for granted. So whether it's from the US, the UK, or Spain, in this exhibition you'll find a technological marvel to suit everyone. Be sure to watch our videos of these cars on the road to really get a taste of what these technological marvels mean when you're behind the wheel. Thanks for joining us, and be on the lookout for our next video from this exhibition, Technological Marvels, A Story of Evolution.